Hello, yogis and yoginis. Welcome to this month's Karmic Warrior Oracle full moon reading for November 2022. And this full moon is a very special full moon, as it's going to be as well a full moon lunar eclipse. So when we're working with the Karmic Warrior Oracle, we are working with the energies of karma. What karma is up for us to be cleared? What are the karmic patterns that are showing up or can be showing up in our lives during this time? This is what we're going to be asking the Karmic Warrior Oracle. So generally speaking, at this time, not only is it a full moon, it's a full moon eclipse, which is a dichotomy, right? You have the full moon coming into the full brightness, but then it's being eclipsed, going into full darkness. So there's this play of light and dark happening at the exact same time. This is very interesting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Oracle has for us or has to tell us, especially as it relates to what karma wants to be cleared right now. What are the karmic patterns that we need to be looking out for during this time, and especially the 2 weeks following the full moon? So let's dive right on in. All right, so let's look at what the Oracle has to say for us for this full moon of November 2022. So as you can see here, I have picked the cards, and what I always like to look at first when I'm working with the Karmic Warrior Oracle is what suit did the cards come from. So I have 2 awakened suits and 1 liberate suit. This is very powerful. This is what telling us that now is a time to really be focused on awakening. So if you were to break this up into how much you should be practicing, about 2/3 of your spiritual practice should be on awakening, and about 1/3 should be on liberation. So let me explain what that means before I even turn these cards over. So I want to take a moment here to explain what I mean when I say we want to spend 2/3 of our time in awakening types of practices and about 1/3 of our time in liberation types of spiritual practices. So on this spiritual path, especially if we're coming from the view of non-dual tantra, which is the view that I'm coming from and that this deck is based on, there are 2 primary types of practices. They are awakening practices and they are liberation practices. And awakening practices help us to have a direct experience of our true nature. And liberation practices allow us to deconstruct or to let go of all of those stories, those ideas, those mental constructs of who we think we are. So essentially, awakening practices are practices in which it's a revelation process, a process in which our true nature is revealed to us through direct experience. And liberation practices are deconstruction processes. They are practices that help us go through the process of deconstructing everything that we thought that we were so that we can awaken to our true nature. So it's this dance, which I think is really interesting that we picked, that these 2 cards or these 2 suits came up for us right now, because during this time of the full moon lunar eclipse, in which there is the full brightness and revelation of the fullness of who we really are, right? The full moon. It's also a time in which there's the darkness, or what we might think of as the deconstruction process. So this full moon lunar eclipse offers us the opportunity to simultaneously experience the fullness of who we really are and awaken to our true nature, and at the same time have a complete destructive or dissolution process happening. So with that, let's go ahead and look at each one of these cards and how they're sequenced here. We'll turn the cards over from left to right. And the way that we read the cards is the first card will give us our theme, the theme that we're working with over the course of the next couple weeks during this full moon. The second card is going to give us it's going to tell us what the unseen challenges are. What are the unseen challenges that we might be faced with? And then finally, we'll be looking at what the unseen opportunities are. So let's go ahead and turn them over. So we got bliss for our theme. So our theme is bliss. Our unseen challenge is Shakti. And our opportunity, our unseen opportunity is dissolution, which I just think is so perfect for this period of time. So let's go through and unravel what's being told to us here. So the theme that the Oracle is telling us is that we have to work with over these coming 2 weeks during the full moon is bliss. This is a big one. This is really, really amazing. It's such a great opportunity for us all. So when you look at the card, which I'm going to pop up on the screen right now, you'll see that this principle of bliss has 2 different interpretations. The top interpretation that you see here on the card is how you will experience the principle of bliss when you are in your power. And you can read it right here. It says, abiding in an unshakable inner peace, joy, and contentment regardless of external circumstances. So that's how you will experience this principle of bliss when you're in your power. However, what we're going to be experiencing is a full moon lunar eclipse. So this is telling us we need to be very, very careful, because we want to look at this bottom interpretation, which tells us how we will experience the principle of bliss when we're not in our power. So when we're not in our power, we will have the experience that happiness is dependent on our needs and desires being met, especially by outer circumstances. Within each of us resides the inherent power of bliss. Now, there's a distinction that has to be made between bliss and general happiness, because general happiness, as most of us go around in life seeking it, is dependent on our desires being fulfilled. It's dependent on me getting this thing that I really want, or getting rid of this thing that I really don't want. Bliss, on the other hand, is not dependent on your desires being fulfilled. Bliss is an experience of inner contentment, joy, and just this inner calm stillness, regardless of the challenges that you're facing in life. And that is the opportunity for you now during this particular full moon, is to experience this principle of bliss. Now, how do you do that? There are a lot of ways, but just very, very briefly, one thing that you can begin to do is to just get very, very quiet, moving your awareness into your heart space, into that still space, that still center point in your being, and reside there. Now this, if you have a lot of thoughts going on, if you have a lot of emotions, if you're emotionally charged, this is going to be really hard. And this is where the Oracle is telling us, hey, if that's what's going on for you right now, it's time to start moving inward and experiencing your inherent power of bliss. Now, the unseen challenge that we'll be facing during these next 2 weeks is the principle of Shakti. So I'll go ahead and put the card up on the screen once again so you can see the principle of Shakti, and we can look once again at the 2 different interpretations of it. However, now what the Oracle is telling us is to pay attention to the lower interpretation. The lower interpretation again is when we're in a state or in a place of powerlessness, how we will experience Shakti. So, and as we read the card, it says a disregard and disrespect for others, animals, nature, and the planet, whether subtle or blatant. Now, I think that this is really fascinating because the full moon eclipse is happening on November 8th, which is also in America the day for our elections. And as most of us know, there's a lot of, tension going on around the elections. But more importantly, there's quite a bit of polarity happening during this time, and it's really, really easy for most of us right now to get caught in this view that in the us versus them or me versus you view, and thinking of ourselves as separate. Now, if we look at the top interpretation of Shakti, this is very important because it's going to inform us. So the top interpretation of Shakti is the immanent aspect of reality. All things that can be perceived through the five senses, experienced as a deep reverence for manifest reality as an expression of the divine. So ultimately, here is what the oracle is telling us. It's telling us to be very, very careful, especially on November 8th, around this us versus them mentality. Shakti is the immanent aspect of reality. Shakti is divinity expressed as diversity. So there is and there might be, and could very well be, as the oracle is telling us, a tendency to want to see others as separate from who we are. And of course, this is reinforced by social media. It's reinforced by the news. It's reinforced by the conversations that we have with our friends and with our family. So be very, very careful about this me versus them, us versus them mentality, because that is going to keep you from experiencing bliss. So our final card is the dissolution card. And our final card, remember, is the card that tells us what our unseen opportunity is. I'm going to put it back up on the screen here so that we can look at the interpretations. And this time we're going to look at the top interpretation of this principle of dissolution. So what it says is the recognition that death is part of a natural cycle and the deeper pattern of reality. You understand that all phenomenal experiences are impermanent. So this is the opportunity that awaits us during this full moon. And how beautiful is this? Because when we recognize that every experience that we've ever had, every situation, any feeling, any thought, everything is impermanent. We know this to be true. Death is imminent. It's something that we cannot escape. But if we look at it in the context of this entire spread, now what we can see when we relate dissolution to Shakti, right, the unseen challenge, is that we recognize that not only are we all an expression of the one infinite field of consciousness, every experience, every situation, every circumstance that ever is, was, or will be, will come and go. It's impermanent. So for us during this time, it's going to be very, very important to recognize that whatever situation that you're in right now, it's not permanent. It will, just like anything else, it's going to have an end. It's going to have a death to it. So if you're in a challenging situation right now, there's going to be some moving through that, and there's a death going on. But again, even if we just look at culturally, socially, what's going on in the world. This isn't to say let's spiritual bypass and say, oh, it's all going to be over anyways, but to not get caught in catastrophizing, to not get caught in and so embroiled and embedded in one way of seeing things that we forget that this is part of a natural cycle. This is part of a larger pattern. It's time to pull ourselves back and look at what is the larger pattern that's playing out right now. So let's look once again. I'll put back up on the screen what our spread is. So we have our theme is bliss, our unseen challenge is Shakti, and our unseen opportunity is dissolution. And if we put this all together, what we can see is we have the opportunity to be abiding in bliss regardless of the outer circumstances that we might be experiencing in our life right now, personally, professionally, socially, globally, everything. But in order to do that, we have to remember that we are all expressions of the one divine love intelligence. And we also have to remember that there are cycles. Everything goes through the cycle of life and death, including situations and circumstances. And this too shall pass, right? So I hope you enjoyed our reading for this month, for this full moon, and I'll post some more information in the description below about the Karmic Warrior Oracle if you're interested in purchasing it or learning more and about how to get one for yourself. Until next time, take care and namaste.